The Vedic Astrology podcast is brought to you by a dedicated and intimate community of patrons. Perhaps you'd like to join us where we meet every week to check in and talk astrology, and where we have monthly gatherings to deep dive into our personal charts, to study Vedic astrology, and to apply and harness transits. Join us today, and thanks for listening to the Vedic Astrology podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Vedic Astrology podcast. My name is Fiona Marks, and today I have a return guest with us. I'd like to introduce once again to the Vedic Astrology podcast audience, Pratyush Bhattacharya. Thank you so much for being here with us.
I'm very happy to be here. It's an amazing podcast.
Thank you. And if you guys remember, in season 3, episode 12, Pratyush was generous enough to come and speak to us about his book, Decoding Zodiac, with Vedic Astrology, Volume 1, Rasi and Graha Interactions. And it was fascinating to spend time with you, Pratyush, where we discussed the ways that the Rashis can inform Vedic astrologers and how we can return to the pure and deep roots of those Rashis, of those skills as you outlined in the book. But even when I met Pratyush for that interview a couple of years ago, there was already a volume 2.
Yeah, in the works.
So you've obviously been really busy since we last saw us, and I'm delighted today to have the opportunity to share with our audience this new volume. But before we jump into the new work, let's talk a little bit about the original book, Volume 1. What's it been like since that's been out and published, and to have Vedic astrologers interacting with it? What's been the response, and how have people given their feedback to you?
The response exceeded my expectations in every possible way. I wanted to write the book because I needed to get it out of my head. I had no expectation of anybody ever reading it. I just did my part. I wrote it. It became a finite thing, a complete book. I wanted to see my book in my hand. That's the only reason I even printed it. And the response I got was, seriously, I didn't ever expected it. I just thought, okay, I am rambling inside my head, so why not I put down my ramblings in pen and paper? So my head becomes a calmer place. It was therapeutic for me. It was cathartic for me. And somehow that experience has intrigued people. It has made people interested in the way that I think about astrology. I couldn't ask for more than that. So I'm absolutely happy the way it turned out to be. And of course, that inspired me to go even deeper. I saw what people are liking. I wanted to take them further, and let's see if I can give you a more purer version of how I think. So the second book is far more personal for me because I'm less performing here. The first book has an element of performance, but the second book's different. Here, I'm not holding back. It's my exercise in being real to the world, to the very, very loving community of astrologers.
This is a beautiful response on both sides, isn't it? When the audience responds and it allows the author to be even more themselves.
Yeah.
I couldn't ask for anything better.
Yeah, I seriously couldn't.
Perhaps one of the reasons why the audience responds in that way, I personally find when I'm reading it that Pratyush is a great friend to me as I'm reading. He's really trying to speak to me and keep the concepts, the philosophy, the techniques in bite-sized pieces I can grasp one at a time. And it's almost hold my hand through the process, give me examples. I also personally, I love diagrams and tables. If things could be displayed visually, I'm always going to
Me too.
receive them a lot more.
I try to do this. Thank you so much.
And I guess that brings me to a question that I had, because when I was interviewing you for Volume 1, there is so much in Volume 1. But I know, like many astrologers, there's a central section in there that is the Rashi and planet interactions, that anytime you go, oh, I've got Venus in Scorpio, what can I think? And you'll come across a page where in Volume 1, Pratyush will go through the different ways that sign and that planet interact with each other and give you a bit of a summary of some strengths and weaknesses. So as a working astrologer, that section of the book becomes a well-turned-to section. When I met you and I knew that there was a Volume 2, I was expecting there was going to be Saturn in the 7th house or whatever, Mars in the 3rd house, something. And there is a chapter somewhat like that in a way, but there's so much more in here than a quick, easy reference where you look up your paragraph that you're looking for. So tell me a little bit about how much actually, as you wanted to share with us about Rashi and Graha and Bhava interactions, how much context did you need to provide around that to what I might have thought was going to be the meat of it, which is the house?
Question. Thank you for that. I think in the first book, we're working with two variables, grahas and rashis. That means we can essentially lay them out in a matrix, right? 9 grahas in the rows and 12 rashis in a column. And then you can fill out each box. But in this book, it goes 3D. It's three-dimensional now. We have 9 grahas, 12 rashis, and 12 houses. So it's impossible to write down that many combinations. And it wouldn't even be useful because once you bring in houses, you're not just adding some more variables, you're adding a whole new dimension to it. It's categorically different thing. So I think the core essence of all my astrological knowledge is this. These are roles that life makes you play. You have no choice. You will be playing those roles whether you like it or not. The Rashis are the 12 skills. These are the 12 ways you can play those roles. Not all these ways are equally efficient for every single role you play, which is where the interaction of grahas and rashis come into the picture. The more efficiently you play a role, the more quickly you can fulfill the need of the graha. Now, if you look at simply the graha and rashi interactions in a chart, you can do that without taking into account what is the person's ascendant is. That means where they are born, you don't have to take that into account. Because you calculate the positions of the grahas in the birth chart from a geocentric perspective, which means essentially you take the Earth center as a reference frame. So where on the surface of Earth you are born, that is not relevant there. The location is not relevant there. So if you're reading the chart only from the context of rashis and grahas, you're doing a temporal reading. It's only the time of birth that matters. Space is not into the picture yet. Once you bring that space in, the location of your birth, you have to switch from geocentric to topocentric view, which means now Earth has a radius. It's no longer a point, it's now a sphere. And where you are located on that sphere at a given moment in time determines how you see the sky from your unique perspective. This unique perspective of you looking at the same sky as somebody else maybe on the other side of the earth is captured in the house system. When you are born in a given latitude, given coordinate on earth, that means at that time, nobody else could be in that position. That was uniquely assigned to me at that point. So the view of the sky that I'm seeing there is my unique perspective linked to this incarnation. It's unique to me. So essentially the house system captures how you see the reality of your time of birth from your unique context. So it's a kind of meta here that you ask me about context of grahas, rashis and houses. Houses are the context of life. This is where the ideas of that ascendant templates come in. That's why I think one of the most profound things with astrology, these templates, is that the moment you're born, you get an ascendant. This ascendant mapping decides where the other 11 houses are going to be mapped. This map will decide how you look at life. This is your category of life into 12 segments. You can only have 12 options there. And then each one of these options will be modified depending on when you are born. So we can think of the templates as like default setups that nature has created for human beings. And the default is then tweaked a little bit based on when you are born. If I go a little bit deeper here, just to give it like what do I even mean by your unique perspective, each house represents a certain personal motivation. If you think in terms of how a human relates to the grahas, rashis and houses, we relate most directly to the houses. In order to fulfill the motivations of the houses, we tend to use the skills of the rashis that maps to it. But as we practice the skills of the rashis, we inevitably learn to embody the roles of the grahas that rules them. It's more like nature's way of setting a certain sequence of traps. It will make you pursue the house so that you are forced to practice the Rashi. If you practice the Rashi, you cannot help but become better at embodying the Graha that the Rashi rules. It's all like this very nice conspiracy where nature is telling you, I'm going to make you embody all the Grahas. But I know you're not going to do it on your own because you are children. I will make it personal for you. So houses are nature's way of making the zodiac personal to you, personal to all of us. I think that's the context.
And that picks up on so many beautiful things in the book. One of them is that you take the time to explain what you've just been talking about there of the Rashis as being earth-centric and then the houses as being this, I think you say topocentric, but to the person, how these two spheres interact with each other. And you've just encapsulated that beautifully. And in the book, I think it's chapter 11, and there we have those diagrams of the two spheres interacting with each other.
The local space and the topocentric sphere of the Earth, yeah.
Exactly. So if you're struggling at all with understanding cusps, right there in the book is this great diagram. And as Pratyush is just saying there, you're saying it's a beautiful conspiracy to get these three different modalities or three different perspectives work together so that we get to experience life fully through the houses, the Rashis, and the planet. But I have here in my notes that there's so much to talk about in this book. I'm going to ask each of us to share our favorite chapter. And you already just shared my favorite chapter, which is the Ascendant Templates. And I think this is something that has always called to me about Vedic astrology. And it's a very beautiful tool that's available because of using the whole sign and the whole house method, that we're able to look at which planet fully owns that sign. And therefore, we know that there's only one planet that is in charge of that particular sign and that particular house. And then due to that whole sign, whole house, wherever that planet goes, it also goes into a whole sign and a whole house. It gives us a way of understanding or being able to work with the chart that other house systems don't necessarily give. But these Ascendant Templates, this is chapter 18 in your book. If there was one section that I think will become the most thumbed as we're doing our research for a chart, it's, I've got a Taurus Ascendant. And,
then let's look at the template.
Mean? Yeah, what does Mars mean for a Taurus Ascendant? And if anybody is listening to this and looking for a practical application of this book, you might think, it's so large, it's overwhelming, I'm not sure. This is extremely practical. Tell us a little bit about.
I'm good that you asked. So if you start reading charts in real life, eventually you're going to ask the same question. This is a person's ascendant, Venus in 7th house, in Taurus. Then the question becomes, how do you integrate the three? That's the essential question you all grapple with all the time, no matter what kind of reading you are doing. That's the basic. So I thought, why don't I try to develop a protocol that addresses these basics once and for all? So I thought the core question is this: how do I integrate Rashis with houses and Grahas? But then I thought, let's remove the Grahas first, because the position of the Grahas will keep changing depending on the person you are. But the moment you are born, you'll have an ascendant. It will create a permanent map of the houses with the Rashis. So why don't I work with this blank chart, so-called blank chart, which is not blank at all? But it's the architecture of an individual. And then we populate that architecture with individuals, which are the Grahas. So before you bring the population in, let's look at the architecture itself. What is this person's blueprint? I think it best serves if you simply give an example. This is the easiest thing to do. Let's pick your favorite ascendant. Do you have a favorite ascendant?
The sign I'm in love with right now is Aquarius.
Let's start with that. Aquarius is a bit of a special sign. So if you're born with an Aquarius ascendant, you have this unique feature that your ascendant lord and the 12th lord are the same Graha.
Yeah.
And this Graha happened to be Saturn. And if you add the fact that Saturn will be debilitated in the 3rd house and exalted in the 9th house, this whole mapping is a unique blueprint for Aquarius ascendant people. And everything unique in astrology is also indicative of a unique trait of the person. At the same time, a pitfall. It's almost like a specialization. They're specialized in something at the cost of something. So what's the cost and what's the loss they're sustaining for this? That's the question. So So let's think about what the ascendant really is. Now, I'll talk about a little bit about how I think of the houses. The houses are very beautiful in the construct because if you look at the Grahas and Rashis, they're made of so many archetypes. I mean, Rashis have 16 archetypes. Grahas have 7 or 8, even more actually, if you dig into all the available work. So it may sound like, okay, if there are so many archetypes, they must be very complex and stuff. But the truth is, the more archetypes you put in, the overlap becomes narrower and narrower. It becomes very strict. But the houses are advanced in this sense because there are only 2 archetypes. The gunas and purusharthas. That's it. What makes me think houses are motivations is grounded in the notion that they're constructed out of only 2 elements, purusharthas and gunas. So what are these things? The word guna means rope. These are archetypes that are common among houses, rashis, and grahas. So essentially, a guna in the context of house means the scope of your motivation. It's just that it's a scope. If it's the tamas guna, the scope is personal. This is the scope where you want to take from the world in order to survive. This is about you and nothing else. The word tamas actually means darkness. It doesn't in a negative sense. What it means is that if you're in a room and the room is entirely dark, the only person you're certain is in the room is you. There could be 10,000 other people. You don't know. So in the darkness, the only awareness that you can possibly have is of your own existence. So tamas guna indicates all motivations of you that are about you. Not because you're selfish, but because you don't even know what else is there. Then comes rajas, which is about interpersonal. The word rajas means fog. So it's not dark entirely, but it's foggy. In the fog, you can only see things that are close to you, that are around you, near you. You have vision, but it's limited. So you can think of your family, you can think of your partner, you can think of your colleague, but that's about it. But the moment you become capable of thinking of other people in your life, you cannot help but think about transactions. If the person is there, they will have their needs. If you are here, you have your needs. And you have to work out an equilibrium between how you fulfill each other's needs in a sustainable way. Rajas is the motivation to find sustainable ways of fulfilling each other's needs through transactions. Then comes sattva. The word sattva literally means ray of light. It essentially means sun ray. So now the fog has lifted. You can see, oh, I'm in a place where there's 10,000 people. I'm a part of my community. I don't exist in isolation. So this is where you start thinking, instead of taking, you realize, as long as my community thrives, I thrive as a component of it. So sattva is no longer about me or me and you. It becomes us. So these are the 3 scopes of your awareness as human being. As we live through life, we are parallelly engaging in all 3 motivations. You have to look for yourself, obviously. You have to look for people around you, but you also have to be looking out for your community as a whole. We have to do all these 3 things at once. Now, if I take a little psychologically think about it, when a child is born, they're only tamas. All they are physically capable of thinking and perceiving is their own needs. But as they grow up, they are taught to take into account needs of other people around them. But you have to share your food. You have to share your toys. We are teaching them to be rajas because rajas is the part that you need to be able to play. But then you grow older and eventually at some point you become a parent. Now you have to give back. You can't ask stuff from your child. It's only a place of giving. But why are you doing that? Because you're creating a new individual who will be the part of the community. Your raising of your children is how you give back to the community in the most fundamental sense. Because you're raised in the same way. At some point, you're giving it back. You're completing the circle. So these phases of life are very directly connected to also phases of a psychological growth. If you're a very tamas-driven person, then you are still fulfilling your child mind needs. If you're more of a rajas kind of person, then you have grown up to become an adult. You see the world as full of people who are equal in a certain existential sense. So interact that way. If you're driven by sattva dominantly, then you're a person who is very parent-like, like a guru kind of saint-like person who is always thinking about giving back. these modes are engaged in the house system. If houses 1 to 4 are more dominant in your birth chart, then you are more predominant toward tamas motivations. Your way of engaging with life is more about fulfilling your needs before anything else is. And then 5 to 8, we know the deal, it's the rajas, and 9 to 12, it's the sattva. And then comes the purusharthas. The purusharthas, the word purusha actually means activity. It's the actions you take. And artha means what's valuable to you. So it's about determining what actions you take based on what's valuable to you. There are 4 purusharthas: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Dharma means what's valuable to you is living by your authentic nature. You're created in a certain way, you have certain natural traits, you just want to live according to that. If you are motivated to do that, then you're driven by dharma. Dharma means essentially be spontaneous, be your real self, don't try to conform, don't try to edit yourself to fit in, just be yourself. So, tamas dharma, if you merge the two, would be the first house. That means you must be spontaneous and non-conforming in order to fulfill your personal needs. The personal needs part come from tamas, and the motivation that you must be spontaneous to be able to fulfill those needs comes from the purushartha of dharma. So tamas dharma is about individual spontaneity and authenticity. And we can map the whole thing like that. Artha houses are about worth. In a more deeper sense, arthas are about expectations. The idea is this: okay, here's my first house, tamas dharma. And let's go to the ascendant. Let's do an Aquarius ascendant person. This means that your motivation of being authentic as an individual is dependent on your ability to use the skills of Aquarius. The moment you're born, this conditioning has happened in your mind already. You're programmed to conclude that what authenticity means for me as an individual is to be able to engage in the skills of Aquarius as much as I can. I must be seen, I must be expressing myself doing Aquarius stuff. And what that means is a whole new discussion. Aquarius stuff. And that should be my core identity. But every Aquarius ascendant person would think the same way. Doesn't mean they will all be equally capable in doing Aquarius stuff. That's where the second house comes in, which is artha. The artha is your standard of performance. It's at what level you are satisfied with the expression of the dharma that precedes it. So, the second house will tell you, here's your expectation that you're setting for yourself. The second is what I expect from myself. I expect to do this way. I expect to earn this much. I expect to speak this way. I expect to be this healthy. These are my personal expectations. If the second house is predominant in my chart, I have a lot of personal expectations. This can make a person highly ambitious. They set high standards for themselves, which can even go pathological at some point. Third is where the kama kicks in. The kama is the opposite motivation of dharma. It says, in order to survive, sometimes you have to fit in by editing yourself a little bit. Essentially, kama is the drive to evolve and adapt. It tells you, as your environment changes, you must be able to adapt. So, your motivation to adapt to change is kama. Tamas kama would be your motivation to adapt to change in order to ensure your personal survival. Tamas artha would be your motivation to set a certain standard for yourself in order to ensure personal survival. Now, if you do these things, dharma, artha, and kama, in sequence, then of course I have done everything right. How do I feel about the state that I am in right now? I have done the work. What is my prognosis? What is my level of satisfaction with what I have done so far? That's where comes moksha. The word moksha is in a deeper spiritual sense, it means liberation. But I don't like to use that term because that's like the extreme state of it. Like, we don't experience liberation on a day-to-day basis. So how do you experience liberation? It's simply the idea of contentment. See, the moment you become content with something, You no longer think about it. You're content. It's done. It's in the past. You move on to the next thing. This very idea that I have to reach a certain perception, certain standard in my mind to feel content about it. The moment I'm content, because I'm no longer thinking about it, technically, my mind is liberated from it. I have let it go. So mokshas are about letting it go. It is about the motivation to seek contentment about your current status of survival. So let's say you're working at a job and the job tends to be quite difficult, but it also pays well, but maybe it's too far away from your home. Like there are so many parameters to it. And at some level, you are analyzing it, right? That, okay, is it really worth it? And even you say, you know what? Yeah, it's hard. There are some negatives, some positives to it. No, I couldn't do much better than this at this point. This is contentment because I decided I will be content with what I have right now. Now, if your fourth is afflicted or there's a lot of grahas in it, I would like to say this is like a focused fourth house. The more grahas are looking at it or in it, the more depends on fulfilling this house. So for you, fulfilling the fourth is very important compared to somebody else around you. No matter what happens in my life, I must feel extremely content about my life. And that means unless you feel content, you're going to keep seeking on the next option. This is why more focus on the fourth house will make you restless. You won't be content with what you have in the present because the standards of contentment are high. A lot more is riding for you in the domain of contentment. So this is a very basic way of looking at the house system as fundamental motivations. Each house is a motivation. The 12 motivations are constantly driving us. Probably every day, everything we're doing, right from brushing your teeth to going to bed, every single thing can be mapped to one or multiple houses. And that's something I actually ask my students to do. I call this micro manifestations. Look at your day. At night, write a journal, but don't write normal journaling. Ask yourself, what first house thing did I do today? Write one instance of it. What second thing did I do today? This is a fantastic exercise because it's the one thing that is difficult with astrology is that it's very easy to make it grand. But first house is dharma. Fourth is liberation. Some things like that. But how does dharma looks like on a day-to-day basis? Picking the shirt that you want to wear is dharma. It's how you spontaneously want to adorn your body. It's a self-expression. These tiny things, that means if you see a person who really wants to pick their own colors, they probably have a dharma house somewhere, something going on there. These little matchings that when you take the chart and can see that in day-to-day life, this is the real magic happens. The ascendant templates are about doing this in a more sophisticated way, in a more rigorous way. Now you can come back to the idea of the ascendant mapped to Aquarius and then the 12th map to Capricorn. The 12th house is a whole beast on its own. We will probably talk about it in a separate content. We'll see how it goes. But right now what it means is that the ascendant is how you express yourself authentically. And if it maps to Aquarius, that means you would believe that in order to express yourself authentically as an individual, you must become capable in doing Aquarius efficiently. And then Capricorn, 12th in a very general sense, without going deep into it, it's about learning to be content. When it's a moksha, it should be about contentment. It's about contentment with your place in your community. Right now, look at your life. Everything that around you has been built in the past, right? You're not building anything in the moment. You're experiencing what has been built so far up to the last moment that you have breathed. And our perception is based on that, right? Because we are not thinking of who we are based on who we will be in future. We're thinking of who we are right now based on what we have experienced in the past. And by past, I mean until the last moment you have breathed, this last breath. If you're satisfied with that, then you have fulfilled the motivation of the 12th house. You have sattva moksha. You're satisfied with the way you have lived. So for Aquarius ascendant people, that satisfaction is dependent on their ability to practice Capricorn. Now, what is Capricorn? Capricorn is the skill to bear your burden with the understanding that no one's coming to carry my own burdens. There are certain burdens in life that you must be able to carry on your own without any expectation from the world. So for an Aquarius ascendant person, the better they become at being at peace, to carrying their burdens just because they see this is how life is for everybody. Everybody has their own cross to carry. If they can reach that mode, they will find contentment with the life in the community. This is not true for other ascendants because their 12 do not map to Capricorn. They have to understand this idea that everybody is carrying their own cross. I just have to carry mine. And that makes Aquarius ascendant such a deeply, I think the proper word is karma yoga. Their ascendant structure is very dependent on service, that I exist to carry a certain burden, not because I am enslaved, but because this is how life is. I'm responding to life by carrying the burden that it bestows on me. So this is the Aquarius ascendant people can often turn to be quite spiritual actually. And their spirituality is not wishy-washy. It's very grounded in reality. If you go deeper into it, Saturn's the god of death, right? It's the god of time. They realize everything is ephemeral, everything passes. And this is deeply connected to an Aquarius ascendant person's core identity. They realize that they are not that important, that in this whole wide world, they're like this flicker. Life happens like a flicker and it goes away. So they just see the flicker and they believe that means the moment I'm born, the only reality that's constant for me is death. Birth is the process of the beginning of your death, right? You're born, and the moment you're born, you're dying. It just takes 7 to 8 years for that to finish. And Saturn-ruled ascendants is specifically Aquarius because for them the 12th is also mapped to Saturn-ruled ascendant. And this core awareness at some level is highest. They know life is very much mortal. So they are not worried about big things. They are worried about their mortal reality, how to be their best in this limited amount of time that's been allocated to them. And they end up concluding that I do my best when I carry my burdens without complaining. So that is one small example of how ascendant templates can be really profound, especially for the person who has this ascendant. It can be a deeply spiritual journey for people who are reading their own templates, that you have lived in a house for so long, finally you're seeing the blueprint of it. To me, when I even read my own ascendant template, it feels like the moment when astronauts first went to space and looked at Earth. Oh, this is where I've been living all this time. That's the moment I kept coming to my mind. This wonder that, oh, finally I can step out of the box to witness the box that I've been living within.
And this comes back to this beautiful diagram that you have of the person standing on Earth mapped with the rashis that we all know, that if you live on Earth, you get these rashis. Only that person standing there gets that combination of houses. And so it has that photo from space view of it.
Yeah, the local space.
Also find the ascendant templates are like the same song played in each key.
That's a beautiful metaphor.
They play the song in the key of C major and it's, oh, wow.
It's jovial and bright.
I'm inspired, yeah. And then it's in D or whatever. And it's, oh, there's something in there that I didn't hear when it was in C major. And then they transpose again. Now they're up into E flat or something. And each key that is played, the exact same music, it has a whole different meaning that it's giving to you as the listener.
Yeah, like we are all different songs, right? Gandharvas.
Yeah. Yeah. And in some ways, we're all the same song too, just playing on the keys that we have available. So it does give you this compassion as well. And I think the other thing that the ascendant templates give are, as you said, a map of the house you've been living in. It gives you a chance to detach from perhaps a cultural map that you thought.
That's beautifully put.
And you've been trying to force your life into some kind of culturally approved template. And the ascendant templates can be that really affirming, validating message that you need to say, yeah, I'm going to pursue those things, but in my own way, in that evolution that is natural to myself. So I think the ascendant templates are a huge gift in Vedic astrology.
You're right. This thought so much comes into my mind that at some level we all ask, what's our purpose? And I think the real answer is your purpose is determined by your design. You're designed to be a certain way, and stepping into that role is your purpose. So the design are the templates. So this in some sense can give you the highest sense of, oh, here's what I've been designed to do. And then you go and find your own purpose. Find the best role that fits that design. I think that's been quite liberating for a lot of people.
And it's very interesting. This volume 2 actually starts with a chapter on karma. It's fantastic food for thought for all of us astrology geeks. And so I highly recommend the entire book, but I really recommend this chapter on ascendant templates because Pratyush has given you just a small taste of what is in that chapter. Because if we were to follow this Aquarius template just with Saturn, we have managed to cover that Saturn is linked to the first house and the 12th house for Aquarius. Pratyush has outlined for us in our conversation today what the first house is, what the 12th house is, and what it means to have both of those linked. But in the book, he will go on to talk about what does it mean when Saturn is at its highest expression, when the Ucha is highest, and we all know that will be in Libra, which you were saying was the 9th house for an Aquarius ascendant. So he'll talk about that, which is, I guess, that guiding model of how Saturn might be high. And he'll also examine how Saturn might find itself feeling low, which would be in that 3rd house. So even if your Saturn is not in the 3rd or in the 9th, Pratyush is using it as a way to look at the Graha archetype.
As a spectrum.
So that's what he would say then about Saturn. But then in the book, he's going to now go talk about Jupiter, which would be ruling the 2nd and the 11th, and Mars ruling the 3rd and the 10th. So everything that we just talked about, what that planet owns, the 2 houses, how they're linked together, what that means for that template, then the highest expression of that and the most maybe challenging from an Ucha point of view of that as well. So this map you get of the blueprint of your home is really well thought out and teased out in this chapter. On just that one Aquarius template, Pratyush and I could probably be here for 3 or 4 hours just talking about that one template. And perhaps I just want to highlight for people before I go that there are, in this book, there's sections that cover the Grahas, there's sections that cover the Rashis, and there's sections that cover the houses. And in our conversation today, we've touched on at least some of the chapters in those sections. But we haven't had a chance to talk about maybe the more complex circumstances. So I would just want to mention to people that there are 2 chapters about the nodes, how to add them into this 3-dimensional enormous Rubik's Cube. And there's also a chapter on trauma and maybe astrological ways of understanding and being useful for clients, for ourselves, around our own traumas. And then there are also ways to apply Jaimini and Jaimini Karikas too. So I would say that the book prepares you with Rashis, with Grahas, with houses, then these special components, and then it finishes up with applying that all together.
At the heart of this book, this is meant to be a book for understanding your own subconscious. That's the ultimate point of the book, that you're doing all these things to essentially create a map of your own subconscious. And that you cannot do that without understanding how the subconscious develops over time. And that development is deeply connected to your childhood developmental years through your teens and pre-teens, and what conditioning has been there and how you have evolved them at this point, how you have coped with them. That brings us to the idea of complex trauma. This is a whole can of worms that will require many episodes to unpack. But I simply say that this is the cutting-edge research in neuropsychology at this point. I simply leave with one quote that a lot of psychologists think that the DSM-5, which is the modern manual of psychological disorders, it's around 700, 800 pages long now. A lot of them think that if complex trauma is given its due, look at how childhood conditionings are playing a role in creating these conditionings, it would shrink into a pamphlet. Because almost all of this diverse symptomology has few core mechanisms. And that's reassuring for us, because then we know there are not 20,000 psychological disorders. They can be clustered back into 2, 3, 7, or 10 things. And this book makes this attempt to try to integrate that view into astrology. I'll be very honest, this is deeply inspired by Ernst's work. He's a genius. His work about the pack. That absolutely touched my heart. PAC stands for the parent, adult, and child. This is a way of understanding your mind into 3 components: the parent mind, the adult mind, and the child mind. Essentially sattva, rajas, and tamas in that context. But of course, it goes far deeper into it and makes it a whole psychoanalytic model of astrology. So I thought, okay, let's see if I can take this idea and build it into the very foundation of how charts can be read. So my way of reading charts are psychoanalytic. You're essentially reading the subconscious tendencies of the person, and you cannot do that without understanding what kind of wounds they have been carrying from the childhood. And I tried to give you tools to work with in the book to see if you can do that with using astrology. I will be working with that a lot more in the future, and the next book will be very much diving into it, a whole trauma-informed astrology thing. But this book introduces the idea and leaves you to figure it out and experiment with it, just starting a conversation. That's what I like to do.
All right, sounds like we have our third conversation booked for volume 3 whenever. I did want to then circle back to the final chapter in the book. Is you're drawing together the experience of writing this book and the experience that you've been having of reading charts, and how you yourself have evolved as an astrologer, and how I think this is also in the introduction. I'm sure that this is a book that it would never be finished. You're always learning more. You're always wanting to revise and improve what you have the foundations of, but now you want to just slightly tweak. But in the end, you begin talking about your journey, where we are very lucky to have teachers like Ernst Wilhelm, like my teacher, Ryan Kozak, who have given Vedic astrologers the process of reading a chart in a replicable way, because we're looking at these definable components and we're analyzing the same components off every chart. Every time we do a chart, we're always analyzing these components.
The scientific method of reading charts. Yeah. I love Rand's work. He's brilliant.
So this is great. And it has improved our experience of reading charts. And as you report in the book, our clients also feel really seen, because the work is extremely tailored to their chart. And at the same time, it can feel like perhaps sometimes we just turn the light on for them to some of their
it is too harsh for them.
So I have more knowledge now about, why there is
then what we do about it?
And that I think we're both coming to a similar remedy to that approach, which is that we still want to really personalize, understand each chart. That is our work. And at the same time, you mentioned this awareness of the mythological archetypes, of the mythological hero, that each person is in their chart, that they are connected to a greater story of humanity and spirituality. I'm very inspired by that, and I just wanted to give you a chance to share a little bit of that too.
Let's think of it this way. Say you made a little sacrifice today. Maybe you were eating your food and you found somebody maybe they forgot their lunch at home. So you just shared a little bit lunch, knowing that you wouldn't be totally full in your belly if you shared it. This little sacrifice, in scale it's small, but in category, it's no different than Jesus going to the cross. It's a sacrifice. And you did that just as selflessly as him. The scale was much smaller, in like a tiny fragment of Jesus. But you had been Jesus. Think of Superman. He's an alien. He has nothing to gain from this world. He's already perfected, invincible. He still keeps giving back. His whole existence is sacrifice. So if we look at our lives as not who we are, but at what we do, every small action that we perform are categorically belonging to a certain archetype, a certain journey of a certain hero, a certain myth. For instance, every time you're feeling something difficult in your mind and you somehow learn to process through it, you're going through a Scorpio myth. A demon entered your mind and you fought the demon and won. And you can think of this as like Dementors in Harry Potter. You can think of it as Indra cutting the serpent's belly and getting out of it. You can think of it like a phoenix arc, that you died and you're reborn. And deep-seated trauma, when you learn to work through it, you're no longer the same person, you're a different person. That's rebirth. You belong to a club. You have a community. Even in your worst suffering, you belong to a club. So you can even read up about that. Okay, here's the club. Here are the people who went through the same thing as me. That tells you this is survivable. They survived. As a human, they survived. And therefore, I can survive as well. It's like you have predecessors in every suffering that you go through. I cannot think of anything more reassuring and warm about life that no matter what you're going through, there have been other people's footprints in the same path. No path is lonely. There have been other people there. So you're just walking the footsteps of a very grand journey. You're adding the next paragraph to a big script that has been written forever. And this thought, I think, is deeply therapeutic for me, because if you're going through a problem that is chronic, whatever the problem, physical, psychological, whatever, that means then because it's chronic, it means we haven't been able to solve it. That's the reason it's there. And chronic problems tends to make you feel my life suffering is unique, therefore other people won't get it. The chronicity of a problem not only makes you suffer the chronicity, but it builds walls around you. It makes you think, I am no longer part of the world. The world is passing by me. I'm simply watching it through a glass window. But if you look at this view, then oh, that's not the case. This same isolated island that I'm in, I think I'm in, people have been here. I'm not the Robinson Crusoe of this island. People have been here. And that can give you the courage to finally step out. That if I'm not alone, then there are other people out there. This courage to step out and become vulnerable about your suffering because other people have been walking the same path, I think the heart of therapy, heart of finally letting light into your cracks. And this is, I think, my book's dedication is that poem, the Leonard Cohen, that, And this is profound to me, that a lot of people, especially who are traumatized, they get this idea that I am beyond redemption. I am so broken, nothing can fix me. But the thing is, you ring the bell that still can ring. Whatever you have, you work with it. Forget the perfect offering. It will not be perfect ever. Not even the healthiest person is perfect. And there is no such thing as a healthiest person anyway. You just work with what you can. You live every day, accept that you are not healthy enough. That's healthy. So I think that comes from the idea that have to find a narrative that you're walking through. Human beings are wired to have narratives. Without narratives, we fall apart. We need to have a story. We must be following a story. Because essentially, we don't even follow gurus. We follow the stories our gurus tell us. Without stories, there are no gurus. No wonder all great gurus are excellent storytellers. I think astrology can be used to tell you your own narrative. See, here's the story of your life. And when you get that story, you feel like, oh, I am not a side character in my story. I am the main person. I am the protagonist. And that can give the power back to you. That's it. I can go on forever, but I shouldn't. This is the thing.
No, it's great, Pratyush, because I think that's that inspiration we're looking for as an astrologer, is not just to, like, someone walks into a doctor's office, we read out their blood results and tell them that's fatal, then buy. We're looking, the astrologer needs to be, I've seen patients with this blood work before, and, these are the methods. You are now on this path, and this is a hero's path. And I think that's why I'm really drawn to the Adityas mythology, because it helps us tap into these great deity stories. At the moment, we have Scorpio fighting the demon. We do have some of these animal archetype stories that come with the Western zodiac, but it's very beautiful to also be gaining access to these stories of the gods. So,
what I love about the Aditya is the 7 beings. The moment I read them, I saw them as 7 layers of your mind. The Dante's hell. Think about it. There's the 7 layers of the inferno. And it's not hell per se, but you're working down the layers of your subconscious from the most illuminated beings, Adityas, to the least illuminated beings. What's the last thing I keep forgetting? The Nagas, right?
The Nagas, yeah.
The Nagas, yeah.
Not that they're not illuminated. This is what Pratyush and I are going on to a whole nother podcast episode.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I love about it is each of the Adityas is a type of love. And so even if you get down to that Naga level, which you might like to say is the least enlightened, it's helping us all as beings is to help.
Think about it. If you look at the universe from its beginning, it was dark. In fact, light is an anomaly. It's not the nature. Like the idea of illumination matters to us because we have eyes that can detect light. It doesn't matter to the universe. And all knowledge comes from darkness. That's why Nagas are dark. They're telling you that once you do not require light to see, that's when you know who you are. Like this is the Nagas are connected to moon, right? Yeah. Because moon is the only Graha capable of cycling through the absolute dark and absolute light. And it's from the child mind.
Amen. Well, listeners, I'm going to call an end to this podcast because we could go on and on.
Oh, yeah, this is something we can't stop talking about. I understand that.
My only task is to once again recommend to you this excellent resource called Decoding Zodiac with Vedic Astrology, Volume 2, Graha, Rasi, House Interactions. And I will put the link in the description. It's available from Lulu Bookstore. Can people reach out to, are you teaching, Pratyush, or is there any to contact you?
They can reach my Instagram and Facebook. I'm working there. I do teach. I'm not teaching in a structured way right now because I'm still busy with my research and stuff. But I can plan to produce structured classrooms where people can access me. And I would love to be in conversation with them.
Wonderful. All right. I'll put all of those details in our show notes. And thank you so much for giving us your...
Thank you for having me. This is a beautiful conversation.
Great. And for those who haven't had enough yet, Pratyush and I are going to record a second episode in relation to this book. So please keep your eyes and ears open. We're going to delve deeply into just one facet of the book to give you an idea what's there. So for me now, it's my chance to say goodbye to you and thanks for listening, and that I'm looking forward to being with you the next time we're together on the Vedic Astrology podcast. Thanks, Pratyush. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for having me. Have a good time, everybody.